Alrighty, we are learning Daf Lamed Amud Beis in Yoma, and we just brought a halacha that you have to be tovel every day. To go into the Azara, you had to be tovel. Even if you were tahor, if you wanted to go into the Azara, you had to be tovel. And we had a machlokes between Ben Zoma and Reb Yehuda, what the source of this is. Ben Zoma learned the Kal V'Chomer. He said, if the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur, where he's going from one place which is Kodesh to another place which is Kodesh, and he has to be Tovel, so certainly if you go Michalol Kodesh, you have to be Tovel. That's a Kal V'Chomer Mid'Oraisa. Rabbi Yehuda says not. This is Srach Tefillah, this is a Geder. This is a gather to make sure to remind people just in case they're tummy, because everybody knows if you only go to the mikveh if you're tummy. So if a guy is going to be tummy and he forgot and he's going to go to them, we require him to go to the mikveh. This way, if he'll hopefully remember that he's tummy and then won't go into the azara. So that's what Rabbi Yehuda says. So Mara asked my kamifliya, we're at the top of Laman Abed Beis. So Mara said a very pasha machlekes, a nafkamina between the two, is if this is ma'akiv, if you weren't tovel in the mikvah, or do you mess up your avoid? That's called mechal avoid. Ba'chuli avoid the kamifligi. Lebenzema mechal. That means mechal avoid. He turns his avoid into chulin. That means it's puzzle. If he wasn't tovel in the morning, since it's a din da'iraisa to be tovel in the morning, he learns it from a Kal V'Chomer. If he didn't do that, so the avodah is mechuleles, it becomes chulin. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, where it's only a din derabanan, loy mechel avodah, it doesn't mess up the avodah. That is where we learned yesterday. In fact, the Gemara, second line down, Laman Beis, Ulaben Zayma, mi mechel. Is this accurate? According to Ben Zoma, if a person wasn't tovel in the mikveh before he went into the Azara, and he was takatahar, you're telling me his avodah is no good? I've learned in a brayso, Kohen Gadol shloi taval v'loi kidesh bein beged lebeged ubein avodah la'avodah avodasei kesheira. If the Kohen Gadol, if he didn't do his, if he missed the tefillah, that does not mess up his avodah. So if that's true for the Kohen Gadol, then certainly if the whole source for this halacha is from the Kohen Gadol, and his avodah is not messed up, so then what we're learning, that which we're learning too, which is a regular person, a Kohen going to do his avodah, for sure that is not going to be puzzled. So that is that can't be the nafkamina. Says the Gemara, and the Gemara just finishes this brisa. But if you were l'shalei kidesh, yada v'raglav shachris v'avad avodah v'daseh psula, that is an issue. If you did not wash your hands and feet, you weren't kidesh yada v'raglav before doing the avodah, that taka is an avodah psula. Okay, I just remembered something. I'm going to tell you this. But it's Thursday night tonight. What's tonight? Is it Thursday night? Yeah, Thursday night. Okay, so this is Mamish Gavali. I remember hearing from Reb Shimshon Pincus Zatzal a beautiful idea. He said he was talking about how on Shabbos, Shabbos is a bechin of Beis Hamikdash, and going into Shabbos, your Mamish going into the Beis Hamikdash. And he mentioned this nakuda that there's a halacha before you go into the you go into the Beis Hamikdash to do the avodah. There's a halach. You have to be mikadesh yadav v'raglav. You have to wash your hands and feet. And if you don't do it, it's possible. And there's a minug. There's a chumrah din to be tovel as well. He says the same thing by Shabbos. Me'ikra din, the halach is you have to wash panav yadav v'raglav before you go into Shabbos. And there's a minug of Klal Yisrael to be tovel in a mikvah before you go into Shabbos, because that's another parallel between Beis Hamikdash and Shabbos. Okay. In any event, we got to get back to here our machlekes between Ben Zoma and Rabbi Yehuda. What is the nafkamina? Says the Gemara, Elalameikim ba'asei kamiflagi. Are you going to be mevatel mitzvah's essay if you didn't do it? Le Ben Zoma, who learns a Kal V'Chomer, so then koi ba'asei. So you fulfill an asay. If you do it, if you don't do it, you mess up. You missed an asay. Rabbi Yehuda, like ba'asay, you weren't mevatel an asay if you didn't do it. What's the halach if you're mevatel and asay? So I think who was masakin? David HaMelech. Someone was masakin on a carbon oila if you missed an asay. So maybe that would be the nafkamina here as well. According to Bezemi, you'd bring a carbon oila, and according to Yehuda, you would not. Okay, geschmack. Fragt the Gemara, Umi islay Rabbi Yehuda, hai svara. Does Rabbi Yehuda agree to this svara, meaning this halacha, that everybody who goes into the Beis Hamikdash, into the Azara, is required to be toivel? Mi islay Rabbi Yehuda hachsvara, that our Mishnah says that anybody who goes into the Azara needs tefillah. Rabbi Yehuda, the Brisa said that he said Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Surach Tefillah, it's a din d'Rabbanon. So I was like, what's like? Does Rabbi Yehuda really hold that anybody who goes into the Azara to do the Avodah or to go into the Azara has to do this? Vatanya, we learned in a Brisa, Mitzayra Toivel v'Oimid b'Shar Nikner. A Mitzayra. What's the din of a Mitzayra? Mitzayra, guy became a Mitzayra, so he's got to on day 8. Rashi says B'Shmini Shalai. On day 8 is when, on day 7, he would be Toivel. And on day 7, he would be Toivel, and he would be Megaleach Saira, Yid Nashevafol is here. And then, he was still called the Mechusar Kippurim. That night, I think he's allowed to eat Meiser and Trum, but he's still Mechusar Kippurim, he needs to bring a carbon. He needs to bring his karbanis. That was on day 8. Day 8, he was bringing his karbanis, and he would put his foot and hand into the Azara, even though he was not a Kohen. He'd reach his hand and foot into the Azara, and they would put from the dam and the shemen that he brought, they'd put onto the behoinos, onto his big thumb and big toe. That was what a mitzvah was necessary to do. So now he just went to the mikvah on day 7. Now it's day 8, and he's coming to the Beis Hamikdash, and he's going to put his hand and foot into the Azara. So does he need to be toivel on day 8? Says the Gemara, Mitzayra toivel v'Oimid b'Shar Nikner. The Brisa says the Tanakam holds that a Mitzayra is required to be toivel, and then he stands at Shar Nikner waiting for the Kohen to bring the dam and the shaman. Rabbi Yehuda says he does not need to be toivel. Shekar tovel mi ba'erev. He was just toivel yesterday, so it's not necessary for him to be tevel. So for the Gemara, you see here, Rabbi Yehuda does not require a person who's coming to the Azara to be tevel specifically to go to the Azara. You don't have to do that, because he says he's not tzarich tefillah. Tanakama says he does, and Rabbi Yehuda says he doesn't. In fact, the Gemara, how can the Tani time? How come you trying to bring me a riot from this brisa? The brisa says shekvar tavim mi be'erev. He says that he was already toivel. That's why he doesn't have to go. But he would agree anybody else who wasn't just toivel would have to be toivel the next morning if they were going into. Would have to be toivel when they want to go to the Azara. So in fact, what was the thinking in bringing this brisa as a proof? So where it says Bishum de Kabay Lamir Machriti Ale. He really the Makshin had a different source to ask her, meaning he's not backing away from his kasha that Rabbi Yehuda does not. He's asserting that Rabbi Yehuda holds that if you're going into the Beis Hamikdash, you do not have to be toivel, not necessarily. And where is he going to prove that? So not from that the halacha of Mitzera, but from a mission that talks about a Mitzera. It says like this. Lishkas HaMitzayrin. Where did it get its name? There were 4 lishkas in the Ezra's Nashim. I don't have my chart on this one. But there were 4 lishkas. One of them was called the Lishkas Mitzayrin. So why, and had a mikveh in there. Why was it called the Lishkas Mitzayrin? So he said, Shesham Mitzayrain Toivlin. Because that's where a Mitzayra would be Toivl. That's what the Tanakama says. Rabbi Yehuda says, Loi. Rabbi, where do you go? Loi Mitzayrin Bilvad Amru. Not only does a Mitzayra Toivel in that place, Ela Kol Adam. Everybody is Toivel. So now we got an issue. What's the problem? Here it says, so he has the kashas like this. Here, it seems to be saying that not only I gave the wrong hakdama to this one. Rabbi here when we say the ka'arle my ka'arle mishum the kabayla mir me'achrite alei means we're asking this kasha is asking a steer between the brisa and the Mishnah in the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Okay, I mean I give to you. I agree that Rabbi Yehuda sounds like he holds that everybody has to be table when they go into the Beis Hamikdash, into the Azar. But what about a Mitzera himself? So the Brisa said that Rabbi Yehuda says Ein Nitzarach to be the Shekar Tavel. He does not have to be table because he already went into the mikvah the night before, the day before. So he doesn't have to go back on day 8. But here it says, Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Loi Mitzayran Bilvad Amru, not only does a Mitzayra have to be table, Ela Kol Adam, everybody has to be table. So the Gemara, so we have a steer. Does Rabbi Yehuda say that a mitzvah needs to be tevel or not? Here the Brisa sounds like Rabbi Yehuda says that even a mitzvah has to be tevel on day 8. So the Gemara gives a few answers to this kasha. Number 1, like kasha, had tavel, had tavel. The first answer Gemara gives is the Brisa that says that he does not have to be tevel. That's talking about where he wasn't tevel on day 7, and this where it says he is being tevel is talking about where he was not tevel on day 7. In fact, the Gemara, if he didn't go to the mikvah on day 7, then this guy is not ready to go into the Beis Hamikdash. Hariv shemesh bay. He needs to wait till dark till he can go in. Meaning, the reason why he had to be tevel on day 7, because on day 7 you went to the mikvah, you were tar when it came nighttime, but you were still mechusar kippurim. But if you didn't go to the mikvah on day 7, you're only going on day 8, then you cannot go into the Azara yet because you're still Harav Shemesh, you need to wait for the sun to set. Okay, so that's not a good answer. Both the Bryce and the Mishnah are talking about where he was Tevel on day 7. So why in the Mishnah, the second source we brought, is he going back to the mikvah? As he spaced out. He was Mesiach Das from his tahara process. He wasn't watching himself. He wasn't watching himself, and therefore it's a concern that maybe he became Tami again. Frakti Gemara, if you're concerned that he was Mesiach Das, then you can't go into the Beis Hamikdash if you're Mesiach Das. You're going to need to have a hazah of the paraduma on day 3 and day 7 because maybe you went into an Oila Meis. Damar of Dustoi Bar Masin, Amr of Yechanan, Hesach Hadas, Tzarech Hazah Shlishi V'Shvi. If you're Mesiach Das from Shmiras Gufay, you're required to get hazah on Shlishi V'Shvi. Ella says Gemara Idi V'Idi Delayasach Daiti. Okay, so we can't be talking about where you're Mesiach Das. So we're back to our kasha. Why in the Bryce is he saying that you do not need to go to the mikvah on day 8, and in the Mishnah he's saying you do have to go to the mikvah on day 8? Like kasha, hadit tavaladas bias mikdash, hadalay tavaladas bias mikdash. In the Brisa, where he says you do not need to be tevel on day 8, that's because when you were tevel on day 7, you had in mind that you were going to be going into the Azara. So since you had in mind that you're going to the Azar, your tefillah works. Meaning, there's a halacha that there's a mishnayos, a chumras of tefillah with kavana. That means if you, let's say, were tevel and you just had in mind that you were going to eat chulin, you can't eat truma. And if you had in mind for truma, you can't eat kachim. And so you see, there's such a concept like that. So here, if you want to go into the Azara, you have to have in mind when you're Taivel, I'm being Taivel to go into the Azara. So if the guy went to the mikvah on day 7 and had in mind that he was going to be going to the Azara, Kavaldik, he can go in. But if he did not have that in mind, then he cannot and he'll have to be Taivel again on day 8. So that's the difference between the Brisa and the Mishnah. First, good teretz. Alternatively, Tani, the issue that's giving us trouble here is the lashon that the Mishnah has as Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Einay Tzarech Tefila. No, V'loi Mitzayrim Bilvad. Not only does a Mitzayir need to be Taivel, Ela Kol Adam. Everybody does. So Gemara says that's not the correct nusach. Tani, teach in the Brisa, in the Mishnah, Loi Mitzayir Ra'in Amru. No, a Mitzayir does not need to be Taivel. Ela Kol Adam. Everybody needs to be Taivel. Not a mitzvah because he tabled on day 7. Okay. That's teretz number 2. Ravina Amar, Rabbi Yehuda l'devrem d'Rabbanan k'amar luhu. Rabbi Yehuda was really just responding to the Rabbanon. And he says like this: Lididi, according to me, Mitzera ain't tzarach tefillah. A Mitzera does not need to go to the mikveh because he already went on day 7. But according to you, Aidu li easy mias. You should be maided to me, however, delay mitzeran bilvad amru, that is not just a mitzera that needs to go to the mikvah, ala kala adam, everybody needs to go to the mikvah. Meaning, you, the Tanakama, this is sounds like a third opinion in this machlokes. Ben Zayma holds everybody's got to go to the mikvah. Rabbi Yehuda, the Tanakama holds that a mitzvah needs to go to the mikvah on day 8, and the Rabbi Yehuda holds that agrees that everybody has to go, but a mitzvah can go on day 7. And then you have the Tanakama of Rabbi Yehuda who says no, only a mitzvah has to go to the mikvah when he goes into the Azar, but nobody else does as long as they're tahor. So Rabbi Yehuda is responding, according to Ravina, Rabbi Yehuda is responding to them, is saying, listen, if you hold a mitzvah is going to the mikvah, then you should hold, I disagree with that. I hold a mitzvah, since he won yesterday, he doesn't have to go to the mikvah. But everybody else has to go to the mikvah if you're going to the Azara. And that I disagree, and that's what he was telling them. If you hold the mitzvah goes, you should hold everybody goes to the mikvah. And what's Pran the Rabbanon? V'Rabbanon. Mitzayra, no, specifically Mitzayra, needs to go to the mikvah again on day 8, Da'ish B'tumah, because he's so used to being Tameh. He was Tameh for days already. So, he was so used to touching Tumah, so even if he just went to the mikvah the night before, we're concerned that maybe he touched something again. Da'ish B'tumah. But everybody else like Da'ish B'tumah, everybody else we can assume it's tahor. There's no need for them to go to the mikvah just because they're going to the Azara. Amalei Abai Rabbi Yosef. Abai said to Rabbi Yosef, he wants to know like this. When in the first, the way Rashi learns, in the first brayse that we mentioned here, that a mitzvah is tevel v'ayim b'shar nikna. Rabbi Yehuda Eimer ein tzarach tefillah. What do those Rabbanan hold about with the Tanakam? What do they hold about everybody else? Meaning, why do they just say mitzvah is tevel v'ayim b'shar nikna? Why don't they say everybody has to be tevel if you're going into the Azara? So, Amr le Abayel Rabbi Yosef, Neima Rabbanan de Pligale de Rabbi Yehuda keben Zaymes Virale. Is it a pshat? The Rabbanan really hold that everybody has to be tevel, like Ben Zayma. So why they talk specifically about a mitzera? The Haidik Tani mitzera. This that they talk about a mitzera is la hediacha koiche de Rabbi Yehuda, to show you the chiddush of Rabbi Yehuda, that Rabbi Yehuda says that a mitzera does not have to be tevel on day 8 because he's ready to tevel on day 7. Or perhaps maybe the Tanakama of Rabbi Yehuda holds it's only a mitzvah that needs to be tevel, and he agrees to the Rabbanan of the second brisa that not everybody has to be tevel. Really, he agrees that you do not have to be tevel, and shani mitzvah da'ish b'tumah, and he's only saying that a mitzvah has to be tevel because he's so used to being tamei. Amrlei shani mitzvah da'ish b'tumah. The Tanakh, I'd rather say like here the Rabbanan are parallel, and the Rabbanan of the Brisa hold like the Rabbanan of the Mishnah, and that is that they hold not like Ben Zayma and not like Ben Zayma and not like Rabbi Yehuda, and really not like the Rabbanan of our Mishnah that said. So he's saying that Mishnah argues on this Brayse and Mishnah, and the Rabbanan of our Mishnah holds you do have to be tevel, and the Rabbanan here hold you do not need to be tevel. Gewaldik. Okay, Geshmak Amit tonight. I may post tomorrow for Friday instead of doing double on Shabbos, but we'll see how that goes.